just saying, like, you still got to be hot, like, or you don't get to be on a magazine. Because if we're just putting anybody on the magazine, what's the point of trying to get on the magazine? That's all I'll say about that. I'm sorry, everybody. And yes, I'm fat and hideous, so I feel like I can say this.
Welcome back, Airheads. It's time once again for another stirring rendition of Putting on Air's fancy stuff from two dumb hicks. It's what we do here. Me, yeah. I'm Trae. Him, that's CHO.
I'm CHO.
And here we are.
Hey, we normally don't do business up top, Trae, but we kind of should. Like, that's our fault because we're stupid and we just launch into it. I would like to say, because it's a special show, I want everybody to know that's in the Athens, Georgia area or anywhere around it, February 16th, me and Drew Morgan will be closing out Heathen's Homecoming Weekend for the Drive-By Truckers, and none other than Patterson Hood himself will be hosting our little comedy show. It's going to be at Hendershots in Athens, Georgia. You can go to CoreyRyanForrester.com to grab those tickets, as well as tickets to see me in Charleston and Atlanta. And also, I'll be opening up for Trae in Chattanooga, a ways on down the road, but segue into you promoting your shit. Yeah, go ahead.
We should start doing this up front. Yeah,
we should.
Just go to TraeCrowder.com and see my upcoming tour dates. I'll be in Salt Lake City next week, and then Kentucky, and then the Carolinas, and then on from there. A whole bunch of stuff coming up. And then, in April the 11th, I'll be in Knoxville with Drew from the SHK Universe. And then on April 12th, I'll be in Chattanooga with the CHO himself. So TraeCrowder.com, check it out. Come see me make a hit. So yeah.
Also, while we're doing business, we got a new color in of merch for our Putting on Air shirts. This is like an acid wash, kind of like our uncles used to wear. StayFancyMerch.com. You can get it and you can look as rad as I do. There you go. I'm done.
All right, does hit. Well, what's going on over there, CHO? You got some This Week in Fancy for us?
I do. I got some This Week in Fancy for us. I've got a whole lot for us, man. I mean, if you're about to see once I share my screen so that I can look at these links or whatever. But man, I got so much I got too much show.
Okay, well that'll in that case, let me just show one quick little sort of
please. Well, for the record, if you got things later, I can shut the fuck up.
What's the word I'm looking like? Tone setter?
Yeah,
tone setter.
Please.
And I feel like fits the show because it involves a Frenchman. And, the French. Anything French related always hit. I know this don't hit for some of y'all when I do this because this is another one. Just hearing this will hit, but if you see it, it hits way harder.
Well, then if you want to see it, go to watchpoa.com and at least subscribe.
So can you see this feller?
Yes. Nice
also,
sweater.
It's all in French, so if you hear it, you're not going to know what they're saying, but it still will be funny, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. All right.
Okay.
Well, look here at this feller. Here it goes.
Étudiant encore actuellement?
Oh non, j'ai 56 ans.
Oh, wow, vous faites beaucoup plus jeune, je trouve.
Oui.
Ah oui?
Ah.
Je vous aurais donné 18 ans.
Ah.
That's it.
That's just French people always just sound a little bit rapey.
So see, the people in the comments, I saw people say it's like French is the only language where you can just randomly start moaning mid sentence and it's not weird to anybody. People are just fine with it. But anyway, I don't know why the caption. I saw that originally on Instagram on my phone, and I know for a fact it had captions on it because I did not randomly learn French.
Of course.
So what they were saying there. She asked him, she said, "How old are you?" And he said he was like 60 or something like that. And she was like, "Oh, you do not look a day over 53, or whatever, something like that." And that's when he goes, "Oh,"
like he thought that was a come on.
Yeah, well, I think he was just like, "Oh, that's," it was, I don't know. It pleased him. And so he moaned.
French people come every time they're even mildly pleased.
But also, if you guys could see him, he doesn't look like any garden variety Frenchman. He looks like remember when we talked about how years ago the aristocracy would hire people to just live in their yards as
the gnome dudes,
yard trolls,
yard gnomes. Yeah.
Yard gnome. Yeah. He looks like he would have been good for that. He also would be good with a pitchfork in his hand, perhaps a lit torch, strapping a lady who likes numbers to a piece of wood to set on fire, that type of thing. He looks very medievally, is what I'm saying. Very French peasantry type look. But also, I just like the way he just started moaning weirdly for no reason. Yeah,
it's funny that you bring up the yard gnomes because that was an old ass episode, and I was literally talking about that today with my buddy Chris because we were talking about we don't do politics on this show, but we were talking about leaving the country. You know what I mean? We were just talking about what are our options? You know what I mean? And I had pitched New Zealand, like to go live near the Shire and be hobbits and just, have 11sies every day or whatever. And my buddy Chris had brought up and me and him had never talked about it. He's like, did you know that used to you could be like a person's hobbit just in their yard, and we started, and I was like, yeah, we did an episode on that. And he was like, I mean, ultimately that would suck, but I do think I could do a couple months of it, as long as you get to go in later and then eat. And that's all you have to do is just hit in a nice yard. I could probably handle that for a while. Also on the French thing, I don't know how to find this because I don't know what to type in at all. But have you ever seen the thing where this dude was like trying to break down how ridiculous the French language is? And he wrote like this complete sentence. Now the sentence, I mean, it's definitely a sentence that would never, ever be said. He was just doing it for these purposes. But like the sentence did make sense. And when you put that American sentence into Google Translate and hit the French translator, the audio comes back as like that's all their shit. And I'm like, I know we got there, and there, but like these are all different words that are said ton.
So that's funny, and I have seen that, and it does hit because that's the most French sound. I think
the most French sound is but I don't know how to spell
tonton is not that far off from that, or sacre bleu. Obviously, that's most
how would
French.
you spell hon? HONNH. Yeah, HONGH.
Yeah,
maybe the hon.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, just to be fair, there's tons of examples of how ridiculous English is as a language.
Dude, I know that.
And there's one that's basically that. Well, no, I guess the English version of that kind of is everybody's seen super viral video. It feels like it goes viral again every year or so. But those black kids from Baltimore who read off the sentence, Aaron earned an iron urn.
Yeah.
And they just go earn. And I'm like,
that would work on rednecks from Georgia too.
What is it? Like what? And then another one comes up. He's like, what? Earn. And he's like, damn, we really talk like that? It's funny.
Yeah.
But there's also another example that you brought to mind that I've seen on the internet every now and then in the English language. You probably heard this too. Buffalo is technically a grammatically correct sentence in the English language.
Explain.
The sentence employs three distinct meanings of the word buffalo: an attributive noun to refer to a specific place by the name of Buffalo, i.e. Buffalo, New York, as the verb to buffalo, which is a lesser known but legitimate verb, meaning to bully, harass, or intimidate. And then as a noun to refer to the animal, a buffalo, right? So it's like, and the sentence is unpunctuated and uses these three different written meanings of the word buffalo. And so it goes like buffalo, meaning buffaloes from Buffalo. Okay.
Right.
Buffalo. Okay. So buffaloes from Buffalo, that other buffaloes from Buffalo bully or harass.
That they buffaloed.
Those buffaloes then buffalo. So buffalo. So
well, fair enough.
Did you follow that?
Sure. Now that you've so expertly explained it, sure. But I will say this: like, I know that, and we've been made a mockery of the world languages, for English not making sense. That's why the French one hit for me so hard, because I was like, come on, bruh. Like, it ain't just us.
Let me read the exact same thing, but a few different ways in case some people still don't get it. Bison from Buffalo, New York, who are intimidated by other bison in their community, in turn intimidate other bison in that same community. That's what the sentence means. Yeah, but you can just say buffalo a lot.
Yeah, I mean, some of this, by the way, like it's frustrating, but it's also why I love language. like in a way, like the frustrating parts is what makes me be like, right, it's kind of neat that it's a thing, like it's one of the few things that you do your whole life, and you never really get it. You know what I mean? Like I've been speaking English and writing English my whole life, professionally too. Like it's not, I'm not just writing, I'm not using English to write letters I write professionally. And every goddamn day I learn something by nature of seeing that I was wrong. I was like, oh, that's not how you use that. That was, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, sure, I'm a dumb person. Okay, fair. All right. But like, still, like there's, when it comes to, well, I guess with comedy, like I'm still learning or whatever, but there's certain things in my life I feel like, dude, you ask me any goddamn question about the Lincoln assassination, the plot to kidnap or kill him, and the trial afterwards with the conspirators, I'm not missing a beat. I've had I did that as an episode of Well Read. I had literal historians on there being like, dude, you just explained it as well as I could. I know that shit front and back, but the language I speak, every day I fuck it up, Yeah,
it is true. I mean, it's a good way to, I feel like with language though, like with history, for example, the Lincoln assassination, things just happened, and there's a limit to how many things happened.
That's true.
When you know all the things that happened,
right? You can't.
There's no more to know about
and
that.
It can't change
with language and stuff. A, it is always evolving. B, there's so many like obscure, rarely utilized parts of, like the vast majority of people speak a real low level version of English, and mostly get by. And then like even smart people, they know a whole lot more words and they understand how to use them more eruditely and all that. But there's still plenty of other aspects of English that those people don't ever really use because they don't come up. They don't need to. They're obscure. They're whatever,
Or they ignore, and I have to look at it and go like, oh, so you don't follow that rule. Like, so why do I like for instance, I'll read.
Yeah, some of it is basically useless. Some of it borders on like just almost fun facts or novelty.
Right.
They're not like useful.
Right.
Some of these like obscure rules of English or other words and shit. And that's why they are the way that they are,
right.
If that makes sense.
Like I will be reading like a New Yorker article or some fucking where it's like these people are smart, educated, whatever, and they'll end a sentence on a preposition, no problem. And I'm like, yeah, and it don't bother me, by the way, because I'm like, who gives a shit?
That's the other thing too. It's like, who am I to rewrite the English language? But there's some of those rules where it's like, I feel like most people are like, yeah, but that don't hit. Do you know what I mean? Like what you just said, like sometimes you can in a sentence with a preposition.
I'm writing for entertainment purposes,
and it to flow better and sound better and read better and all that. And sometimes, in my opinion, to do that, you need to break some of these rules. Like you're never supposed to start a sentence with and or but or whatever. But sometimes that's the most impactful way to do it. If
you're doing a punchline,
yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. And they also say rules are meant to be broken and all that shit. But a lot of those like English rules are, they're pretty fucking wishy washy. I think we've talked about before. Probably like. I before E except after C, which is like in reality almost never true. Like it's almost the opposite of what the truth is. So,
it's like there's one of them that is the exception that doesn't prove the rule. But like, I guess what I'm saying is like, I'll get called out sometimes when I'm like, I'll write something from my Substack or whatever. And like a lot of the times I'll know the rule, but I'm like, I don't give a shit because I don't want to say it that way because that's not funny. And the way that I want to say it is funny. And somebody will like call me out on it or whatever. But then like they wouldn't do that to someone who was writing for the New Yorker. Because if that person was writing for the New Yorker, they'd be like, well, they're intelligent enough to know. So clearly that rule doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? It's like the intelligent people seem to be able to do whatever they want with the language. And it's like, dude, like Mark Twain, we used Mark Twain and William Faulkner as like reasons to our first book publisher as to why we should be allowed to write stupidly. And it worked, by the way. But like, to me, it was a great argument. It's like these are two of the titans of the literary world, and they ignored almost every single rule that y'all seem to hold dear. So like,
I mean,
why?
Cormac McCarthy, universally beloved. He don't use no rules of English, really, no grammar or nothing, and still hits. William Shakespeare, very famously, like he just like straight up invented so many words. Right. And it's like That's a wild thing to do,
That
but
is,
because
man.
he hit so hard, everybody's just like, yeah, he can do that. That's
Right.
fine.
It like so
In fact,
me and
because
you,
he said that's a word, he hit so hard. Now that's
It's a
a word.
word.
That's how you know you hit real hard. But at the
Yes.
time, he's just like, I need something that kind of sounds like it's this, and then he just blurts something out, and he's like, yeah, that works. Just write that down, and like people will pick up on it. Whatever. They'll use context clues. They'll know what that brand new word I just made up out of thin air means, and he did that a bunch of times, and it like
Right.
worked.
if you're smart, will you say something? Which, by the way, to me, I've always said this: like when a word, all a word is I say a thing. If you know what I'm saying, it's a word. That's how I feel. It's a word, right? And like Shakespeare would make up words, and everybody just went with it because they were like, "Well, he's smart, so he gets to invent word." But then, George W. Bush would be like, the pastor had a lot of good preacher-tude to him. You know what I mean? And they're like, what an idiot. And it's like, no, preacher-tude's a word now. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's a word.
This is not what I was expecting at all. I was expecting, let me find one that's more in line with what I expected these all to be. Okay, like there's one on this list. I'm going to read you some words that Shakespeare is credited with having invented.
Cunt,
One on
right?
here. One, what?
Didn't he invent cunt?
Maybe this is just maybe this is a family friendly list here, but Xantippe, right, which is a shrewish wife, a bad tempered woman, right? So like,
Heard that.
she's a real Xantippe, but I thought the vast majority of them would be things like that, where it's like he made this up, but it's like
we don't really use it
nobody
anymore.
ever uses that,
Right?
But no, I mean he is credited with inventing more than 1,700 words, which is wild.
That's
but
crazy.
here's just an example of some of them, and I did not. These are not the kind of words I was expecting to be on this list. So fucking alligator,
what?
bedroom,
What?
critic, downstairs, eyeball, fashionable, gossip, hurry, inaudible, jaded, kissing, lonely, manager, nervy, obscene, puppy dog, questioning, rant, skim milk, traditional, undress, varied, worthless, yelping, and zany. Zany's a fun one. That one.
I love that one. I use that one all the time. Okay. First off,
some of these I have.
Wow.
I have an analysis for.
Okay.
It's
Well,
like we've talked before about how like what were we just about your boy Aeschylus, the hitting bald who got killed by that Eagles turtle.
Yeah.
He's credited with inventing the concept of having characters speak to each other in dialogue in theater or whatever. And we were talking about how it's come up before a few times on the show. It's like, it's wild to realize that all these things that are taken for granted, like someone at some point had to come up with them. And then once that person had come up with it, then it just became standard. And now we're born thousands of years later or whatever. And all these things are just part of the human experience.
It feels like.
Right. But they were invented by somebody. So that's why like those people from way back then, they don't seem, or they weren't really dumb, but they seem dumb because they were just working with a much more bare foundation than we have now because of shit like that. Well, I think some of these is like, for example, like bedroom, right?
Right.
Like
it was a room.
There's a bed in it. There's a room with a bed in it. You can see how he came up with that, but this was long enough ago that like no one had yet came up with that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So somebody at some point had to give a name to a bedroom.
Well,
and he did.
Because this was like, back in those days,
you either lived in a hut or a manse with
there was no
chambers.
Separate. There was no separate. There was no separate room. Like if the entirety of the world lived like poor people in New York, we would have never come up with that word either, because like their bed's just in their kitchen. You know what I mean? Like it's just the house, right? So like, this is another
one that follows that exact same logic. Downstairs,
right?
Again,
most people didn't.
You just go down but up until this point, the vast majority of humanity never lived in or went to a multi-leveled structure and had to go downstairs or anything like that. Eyeball,
right?
He observes like, these are round, kind of like a ball,
right?
So yeah, some of these inaudible. I'm assuming audible was already a word.
Already a
and he just
thing.
tacked the N on the top of it. And hissing is wild. People
That
have been
is
doing
wild.
that since the cave days.
Right.
But
So
when you
what
think
did
about
they
it,
call it?
I mean, when you think about it, there's no real intuitive reason why that action is called kissing, right?
Of course not.
It's
He just made up a word.
Just a made up fake word for that thing that human beings have been doing
Forever.
for time immemorial.
Probably one of the first things we ever did.
But it's crazy that he did. I don't know. I bet butts were fucked before we figured kissing out.
Yeah,
That's just me. It's just my assuming.
Because not a lot of romance back then. Because kissing is very romantic, like
intimate.
I'm not afraid to say it. Like the majority of the time, me and Amber get down to business, we don't ever kiss. Like it because we're just going in for we got 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like kissing is like you love the person and it's a thing you're doing that neither one of you get any type of out of. Like you're it's just so yeah, I mean like a caveman wasn't kissing his not wife, the lady that was in his cave. He's not kissing her. Yeah, he's not kissing his mate before he goes out to hunt the mastodons or whatever. You know what I mean? Like he's just doing it. And then, no, that's very interesting. Here's one that I liked, though. It's funny that he invented the word critic because it's like he had to come up with a word for the people that didn't hit for him. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you would almost expect it to be more like
maybe
scathing.
It is. Maybe it is. Maybe critic sounded like something that was scathing back then. You know what I mean? Tick.
It's always hard to know. It's
critter.
Like he also invented cunt, you said, and it's like that sounds real rough, but maybe only because of the connotation we've given it.
Only because we say cunt.
And maybe critic was meant to sound like, like gross in your mouth.
That's what I'm saying.
Inherently bad,
What if the root of it is like from critter or something like that? You know what I mean? Like the little fucking rat, critter, critic. Like,
let me also type in over here.
Yeah, do that because I got another thing to say too. Him inventing 1,700 words like is bananas because like, okay, sure, George R. R. Martin and Tolkien, like, and the people that did Star Trek, like, they've done that too, but they specifically set out to create a new language. So, like, of course, but his is just, it's 1,700 words that randomly were peppered into stuff. Like, he wasn't creating some fictional orc or something. You know what I mean? And also, we don't use Klingon in our daily lives, but we use this shit.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I tried to find like the etymology of it or whatever, and I couldn't. But this is from, this is the source of this is literally Shakespeare.org.uk. So,
right.
I feel like that's a pretty good source. So, also they've got them all sourced. They have the actual plays and stuff that each of these words are found in.
I'm gonna do, and I know I did Shakespeare early on, but that was like before I really. I'm not great at research, but before I learned sort of my methods or whatever, but like I've got Bill Bryson wrote a book that's strictly on Shakespeare, which he don't do a lot. Like normally he is the travel guy and writes essays or whatever, but he wrote like a Bill Bryson-esque book just on Shakespeare. I'm going to read that motherfucker and then we're going to talk about him again because he's so wild.
Bryson, is awesome.
Oh, he's great. Like,
his book, A Brief History of Nearly Everything,
it's great.
Is one of my favorite nonfiction books of all time. Highly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, everything he does is great. Like I had to stop reading one of his books when we were writing our book. Like I was reading a bunch of travel stuff for like inspiration, and reading Bill Bryson when you're trying to do anything in the same ballpark just makes you go, fucking, I suck. You know what I mean?
That's exactly, you're exactly right. Because like you said, he writes travel books. We wrote a travel book before we read before we wrote our travel book. I got his travel book on England, where we were also going.
Yeah,
called Notes on a Small Island.
Yeah, it's great, by the way.
It rules. As I was reading it, I was like, oh man, if we can even approach like this, this will hit real hard. I can, I see how you can make this hit real hard because this is great. And then later, as we were writing it, and I would revisit that book or whatever, I'd be like, God damn.
By the way,
we're not.
Ours is great too. We're not going to sell it short. And by the way, Trae, did you know this? We didn't plug it up top, but I will since it's organic. That our book on Amazon, on the Amazon bestsellers list, Round Here and Over Yonder is currently number 1 in England travel and number 1 in Scottish travel still right now. So it's a good book, but it's like I have
Well,
to
that
do the
means
same.
that we're beating out Notes on a Small Island. Then
That's
if
true. We are. Granted,
'Cause
it was his is an older book, and ours came
Yeah.
out sooner. But
20 years
here's-
before. It still
Here's my
hits.
yeah, of course. My thing on that is I have to like. It's kind of like when the first time I ever saw Tim Wilson live when I was 15 years old, and I wanted to do stand up. And I start doing stand up thinking I'm one way or another, and then like I just devoured all of George Carlin's 16 HBO specials. And at a certain point, you just have to be realistic where you go, okay, I can't compare myself to this motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like I do my thing and they do their thing. And I've just got to hope to be the best me that I can be because, dude, Bill Bryson is like unassailable. I feel the same way with like Rick Bragg and obviously Mark Twain. It's like, yeah, we both write about the South, but like, I'm not trying to be Mark Twain. I'm just trying to have people not hate me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the I think that maybe Shakespeare.org here, this British Shakespeare-centric website, is perhaps understandably giving their boy a little too much credit.
Too much, yeah.
Because I've looked up, so for example, alligator, because I was like, how the fuck?
How would he?
How did he come up with the word for alligator? I mean, the lizard exists.
Right,
You're
but
telling
were there
me that
many in Stratford
fucking
upon
Shakespeare
Avon?
named alligators? Like,
Yeah.
how? Why? So I looked it up, and here, this is, for that particular word, this is what happened. All right. The Spanish found alligators in Florida, right?
course.
When they were doing their colonizing stuff that they were so into.
They don't get enough shit for that, by the way.
We've talked about that on this show before. Because I remember one time early on in this show, they came up and you were like, you even said, you were like, oh, were they doing that too? I was like, bro.
And like, yeah,
I was like,
of course
were
I
doing
know
it.
that.
They were arguably some of the worst and wildest ones to ever do it.
It's
And
so
you're
stupid.
They're the whole reason that Mexico and the entire Central and South America speak
I know.
fucking Spanish.
Well, dude,
and they do somehow kind of get away with it.
I know, and that's what I'll say in defense of
weird.
myself. Because, like, dude, obviously I knew that because two of my favorite bits ever are Mel Brooks's Spanish Inquisition and Monty Python's Spanish Inquisition. Like, I know that, and had been rooted in me, but because it just otherwise isn't really ever talked about and brought up, it had just sort of like, I hear colonizers, I only think of us. Like, I only think of us and England, which was us, but not us then, and then we became us.
They also, they'll give you a couple other things on Spain. Let's go in on
Spain.
business for a minute.
Yes.
Because it's time that somebody does. Because, yes, they get away with the colonizing shit way too goddamn much. And I'm sure there's probably, if we had some Mexican fans or something who might be like, we don't all let them off the hook. I'm sure a lot of them say fuck the Spanish. But like, they do, I feel generally in Western culture, however you want to put it, they get away with their colonization antics a lot more than other countries. Number two, they were not technically part of the Axis powers in World War II, but they were fascistic, and the Nazis hit for them. They collaborated and shit with them. They weren't on our side. They were ruled by a fascist dictator, and helped the Nazis out a lot and stuff. So I feel like they kind of get away with that too.
Yeah,
and then
Italy
also
does
them
too.
motherfuckers.
Italy does
a lot
too.
of people,
by the way,
what?
Italy
Literally was. I was thinking about that last night. Italy literally was part of the Axis powers, and like.
And now we're assholes for calling them spaghetti people. Fuck you.
And people do know that, but they don't give. They just got so outshined.
They
by
just
Hitler.
think of Japan and Germany.
And yeah, no, you're right. Japan is definitely Japan.
And I get Japan because, like, they were
wild.
They
bombed us.
What I'm saying is, I understand
that's where
Japan.
They fucked up.
I know, and that's my point. Like, I understand how, like, when we think about World War II, we seem to just focus on Germany because they had Hitler or whatever. And obviously, Japan was doing some fucked up shit too. But it's like we did get them back pretty good enough to where it was kind of like, okay, we're even. You know what I mean? So and then we did the internment camps and shit like that. And like we didn't do that to Germans, obviously. So I get that.
Yeah,
but Italy, I don't get. Like, I don't get why they get off the hook.
I don't either. But also, Japan, they've treated World War II the way the South treats the Confederacy, i.e., they kind of have never really, like, Germany's very upfront about, like, that really didn't hit what we did.
Right.
Japan don't do that, which is, you know, kind of fucked up. But like,
yeah.
But anyway,
well, let me be
Spain,
racist
the
for a
third thing I was
second.
going to say about Spain, though, there's a third thing is that a lot of people don't really even seem to they don't even get classified as white a lot of times. Right?
I know.
Like
I don't ever think of them as that.
And Antonio Banderas got celebrated one year, right, for being like the only actor of color to be nominated for an acting Oscar that year or something like that.
Yeah.
And he himself was like, well, I'm not a man of color. I'm from Spain.
Right.
And people were like, okay, so you like, you know, you're across the pond Mexican. That's what you are.
Right. As long as you're not from here or England, we consider you a person of color.
Spaniards, man, they just got it made in that way. They just got away with fucking everything, really.
Right.
When you think about it. Like,
Sexy
they don't get
voice,
no shit from nothing. But yet the Italians, I was thinking about that I guess, dude, fucking noodles will go a long way. Noodles and wine and shit.
And Japan also has the noodles, you know.
Yeah.
It's maybe
Germany
that's
don't
it.
really have noodles, do they?
No, they don't. They've got like Spätzle, but it don't hit.
Man, you said don't hit. Are we talking about the same thing?
No, excuse me. I'm talking about culturally. It hits for me. But I'm saying like
you're not that shit.
I agree. I love that shit too. But what I'm saying is when you think of Italy, you immediately think of noodles. When you think of Japan, you immediately think of noodles. German, like their Spätzle, which again I like, it hasn't broken through. Like me and you fuck with German places because we're drunk and we travel a lot. Don't sit there and act like Spätzle has even remotely broken through the zeitgeist. Like, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it don't hit like those noodles do.
No, not even close.
I mean, also, though, if I had to rank them, it is my third favorite of the noodles that these countries do.
Yeah. Well, is it even really noodles? Like,
well, if it's not, then what are noodles? They're like dumpling. They're like skinny little dumpling things, you know?
Yeah, but the ones that I had were like...
I've got some in my cabinet right now. Like, I make them here at the house.
What do you mean make them? You got like a...
Well, I mean, like they're just like the same as you...
that helps you make them, or you have a box of them that...
I just have a box of them like you would have a box of fettuccine. You know what I mean? Where it's a bag, actually.
Right.
But I do it when we'll like fry some chicken or something and sort of have like it's not really schnitzel, but like, I'm like, well, we'll just put that with it and put the gravy on top.
Yeah, but do you how do you make, do you boil it or like pan fry them?
I boil it. I personally boil it, but I boil it, and this is a trick, by the way, that everybody can use. I don't boil any of my pasta in water. I usually always boil it in chicken broth. Chicken broth that I oftentimes make myself, either, you know, in my slow cooker or my Instapot or whatever, just because the noodles, you know, it's like, that's the reason you salt your pot when you do noodles, is because those noodles are going to take in that flavor. That's the reason anytime something calls for water, unless it's like a dessert dish, I just use chicken broth or beef broth or whatever.
I just do too, but
yeah, because why wouldn't you? It's like extra flavor. But I boil them, and then obviously, like you should with everything, whatever sauce I'm making or whatever, I make the noodles to like right before al dente, and then I finish them in the pan. And oftentimes I will, because those type of noodles really sear up really well because they're super doughy. I'll put them at the bottom with butter before I even start with the sauce, so that they get a little brown on them. You know what I mean?
So I'm going to be honest with you about something, honest with you and our audience here. I only just recently had this stuff.
Spätzle?
Yeah.
That's how I'm saying it right?
I think so. And yeah. I didn't even know what it was. I ordered schnitzel at a German place in Jersey.
Fire, I bet.
It was fire. It was so goddamn good. And it had these little things, like dumpling like things, but the ones that I had were like, it's like they had been like pan fried or something.
Right.
They were like kind of crispy and chewy both, but did not have the texture consistency of noodles at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What is this?" And Donnie, who was with me, was
dumpling-y.
like, "That's, you know," he said, "That's Spätzle. You never had that?" I was like, "No, I haven't, but this shit rules." But it was like, they didn't seem like. Again, it didn't seem like, maybe they had been boiled and then pan fried after having boiled them.
I might be doing it wrong. You know what I mean?
I don't know everything. I've been over here looking it up, and like am I
doing it wrong?
No, I don't think you are. All the pictures and stuff, everything I can find makes it look like very noodly.
Well, and for the record, I don't believe in doing things wrong.
I would not have called noodly.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
confused now. It's like, was this place doing it different? Was that not even Spätzle that I had? What the
Well,
fuck?
you know, I mean, you can do a lot of things with like there's some people that I've seen recently, which I really want to try. They're taking like rigatoni, right? And they are like air frying it instead, and they're making these like rigatoni. They'll put some panko on it or whatever, and make these crispy rigatoni bites that they then dip in marinara and stuff like that. Which I'm like, you know, kind of interested in. Like you, obviously,
okay. So we'll move on from the food, but also I never finished my thing about alligator, so I will in just a second.
Or Spain.
No, I did. So hang on. First, all right. The shout out to Red's Biergarten in Newark, New Jersey. That I found it, and that was schnitzel. Definitely was schnitzel, and it was fire too. But it's the only schnitzel I've ever had. And I'm kind of thinking maybe they do it different there. So I've got an off interpretation of what a schnitzel, Spätzle. It was schnitzel with Spätzle. It was both. But the Spätzle's the stuff I'm talking about. Alligator. The Spanish found them in Florida when they were killing all the Indians there. Mm-hmm. And they named them. Okay. And the name that they named them was La Lagarto. Right.
Okay.
La Lagarto. And
alligator.
And that got kind of bastardized to English people, went into the alligato, right? Mm-hmm. Spain found those. They call them alligatos or something like that. And then he anglicized it further, alligato further into alligator.
Right.
But so like, you know, I mean, is that really? I mean, I guess it is inventing that specific spelling of
translation
the word,
of it.
But like,
I'll let him. I mean, I get what they're doing. They're padding his stats. You know what I mean?
Exactly. They're definitely padding his stats.
But I'll allow it because you wouldn't pad that guy's stat if there wasn't reason for people to believe he might have done it. You know what I'm saying? My final thoughts on this, and you know, I just got to say it. Since we're giving Spain its due, and I felt like Japan and Italy might not get their due. Let me say this. Please understand. Now, present day, you should not call anyone a slur. You shouldn't call anyone a slur at all. However, I don't really think our papaws were that wrong when they did it to the Japanese people. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, like, you see all these Bugs Bunny cartoons from like the 30s, and they're like, can you believe they said this? And it's like, kinda. Yeah, I kind of do. But then again, we've moved on. Don't do it. All I'm saying is I don't think we should demonize all those cartoons for saying that horrible word because, again, we forget that at the time they did not hit.
Any of those old cartoons and stuff, it's like, yeah, you have to understand the context of.
They was all straight propaganda.
It was a different time. It was war propaganda. It's just very, very different context. But also, like, in terms of, again, it's another thing Japan kind of gets away with, but not with everybody. A lot of people do know and realize it. But like, Japan was intensely fucked up in World War II and did some horrible shit.
Horrible.
So like, any papaws that like fought them in the Pacific and
they get a pass,
and were like witness to their horrors and stuff. I kind of don't blame any of them for not having the highest opinion of Japanese people for the rest of their lives.
I mean, obviously,
but again, dude, look, Japan, white people, we fucking love Japan. Now, black people too. Everybody loves Japan, except for other Asians. Other Asians do not like Japan.
I love Japan.
Everybody else loves Japan. So you guys are fine now.
For the record, I still don't think our papaws should have
fish and noodles and swords.
I still don't think our papaws. I still don't think our papaws should have taken it out on a random Japanese person that lived in America and worked at a store. Much like I understand people that, you know, had lost loved ones in 9/11. I understand them being a little wary of terrorists and Iraq, but like, that doesn't mean you see any brown person and think blah blah blah. My point is, all I'm saying is, back in the day when they would talk about them and use like the specific Imperial Japan and they would use a slur, it's like, yeah, I get that, whatever, you know. And also, I got to say, as far as slurs go,
not that bad.
It's not that.
I was going to say the same exact thing.
I don't even
like
get why it's a slur.
They really got off easy in terms of slurs. Like, come on, man.
That and like, you know, there was this.
They couldn't have done nothing better than that. I mean, that's just
shortening it.
Right. It's barely not what they're just actually called.
Our papa probably couldn't pronounce Japanese, so he just
start to say what they're actually called, and you just stop early. Like,
well, dude.
it ain't that bad.
Well, it's also like
Fucking-
there's instances of like this happening with other countries, but it's not a bad thing. Like Brit, for instance.
Right.
That's
you can
fine.
say Brit, it's fine.
Well,
yes.
this
I was
guy-
trying to think of an example
By
of
the
that.
way,
Yes, Brit
I'm
is
not
an obvious one.
advocating. We know now that it's meant as a pejorative. I'm not advocating for it. What I'm saying is I don't understand how it ever got to be, I can't believe you said that, when it's like, what do you mean? Like, it's like
The
for
other
instance,
thing about that word is that it also has a homonym or homophone or whatever that's it's pronounced exactly the same that people use depending on where you're at in the country. It's not at all a slur. For example, our former manager was a Jap, a Jewish American princess, a JAP
There you go.
on the West Coast.
God,
There's a lot of Japs.
our
and they
papaws
mean
would have hated
Jewish
them
girls.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
But I heard somebody on a podcast talking about a Jewish girl, and they said that, and they just said it very casually, and the other person was like, "Yeah, she is," whatever. And I was like, "What? And then I was like, "Oh yeah, that's also a thing."
I'm glad
we ain't got no
I'm-
Jewish people in the South, so
No.
I'm not used to it. But out
We-
here in California, you do hear it sometimes.
We have one at least, because I remember one time me and you, we were celebrating our book's release. We were about to go on The View, and I had invited my mother and my Aunt Beth to come stay with us and run up our bar tab at that very nice, expensive hotel. And we introduced all of them to some of our comedian friends. And this is an instance, I don't think I've ever told this on the show. Maybe I have. This is an instance where a Southern person genuinely wasn't even a little bit being racist, but because of how we sound, it just sounds racist, just saying a thing. Where my aunt, I introduced her to a bunch of my comedian friends, and one of them let her know that he or she, I can't remember, was Jewish. And my Aunt Beth just wanted to state a fact. But unfortunately, that fact was, oh my God, y'all remember that time we saw that Jew at the Pizza Hut in Birmingham? She was just stating a fact. You know what I mean? But that didn't sound good across the way. And before we take a break, because we have to, I would like to say there was an instance, too, that I think this guy got fucking railroaded. There was this dude who used to announce, I can't remember his name because he just don't do it anymore, but he used to be one of the announcers for the Masters, right? And he would be talking about Colin Montgomery, he's coming up, the Brit or whatever. And then he'd be talking about one of the guys from France, and he'd be like, the Frenchman, whatever, the Scotsman, the this or whatever. And I can't remember the golfer's name, but he was Chinese, and he was like, okay, coming on, a great shot by the Chinaman. Like, that's what he said. And like, he clearly didn't mean it like an insult. He just was so in the pocket of being like,
that is another one that it's like,
I know, that's why I brought it up. That's why I brought
Englishman,
it up.
Frenchman,
Chinaman,
fine. Dude, we were like, it's wild how much white people fell off in the slur game when it came to Asians. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Like,
well, I mean, they had there was the other one for Chinese people that's not really that good either. It's just,
oh yeah, like what
I'm not gonna
a
say
knight
it.
might have in his armor.
yes, exactly.
Yes,
I'm not saying that because that does sound bad, but like Chinaman, I know I
that
would
one's
never
more slurry.
I would never call one a Chinaman, but I feel comfortable saying it in an explanation. That's
like
how.
who even decided that again? You say Englishman, you say Frenchman, you say. I'm sure there's
The Scotsman,
a Scotsman, an Irishman,
and that's all this guy was doing.
And I know that
like
all those are white and Chinese people are Asian, but like, who even decided that
The
Chinaman
Spaniard
was bad? And
Right.
those other ones are fine. I never
It's only because the people saying it were mean. The same thing with Jap. Like,
Also,
they were
I'm
saying
sure a
it
lot of times-
aggressively.
I'm sure a lot of times what happens is, knowing rednecks the way that I do, is that they'll be like, oh, there's a little Chinaman over there, and it's like a Korean dude or a Japanese guy or whatever.
Right.
And it's
But
like,
again, they're still not trying to be.
right.
You know what I mean? All right, we got now a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
It's Slur 30 now for let's hear from the good folks at Factor.
Oh, that's hilarious.
You gonna try to optimize your nutrition this year? Well, Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved, ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. You can fuel up right away and feel great no matter what life throws at you. I've said before many times, and I mean it. I'm a big fan of Factor. I actually literally just wolfed down a Factor right before coming in here and sitting in this chair. It was Nana's Italian Bolognese.
Hey!
And it was mwah, as they say over there. And they do the, the thumb and finger thing. That's my rating. Two Italian hand motions.
Mm-hmm.
That is good, right? That's good. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
I think they also do it sometimes when they're mad, like, hey, but like usually it's good.
Yeah, right. But Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. You can lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals. It's based on a randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto. Results may vary depending on your own diet and exercise, of course, but they have 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each and every week. So you can pick meals tailored to your goals. They got Calorie Smart, Protein Plus. They got keto options. They also have like breakfast items, grab and go snacks, and more add-ons you can do if you want. So reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/POA50 off and use the code POA50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code POA50 off at factormeals.com/POA50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factor. It hits. You should hit too.
It does hit. And I just want to add that today is an all Factor day for me because I got my box, and this morning for breakfast, I'm trying not to eat as much breakfast, but just get a little something on me. I had a beet juice that they sent me. Then for lunch, I had the herb crusted chicken, and Amber's not here tonight, so I'm having some pork chops from Factor. So all Factor day. It's great. And you know that my big old butt wouldn't eat it if it didn't hit. So check them out. Holla. That's so goddamn. And by the way, we were done. And I was like, now one more thing. God damn it. Let me tell you. Yeah. Let me tell you what my papa would have been able to
cool.
Fine. Or at least I don't understand them.
All right.
We stand on business.
To me yelling that some slurs are cool. Make that the cold open. Just stop. No context.
I mean, aren't you proud of us that we stand on business, though?
We do stand on business. Yeah. I say leave all this little part in, but
sure.
As far as I'm concerned, but we are back from our break now.
We are.
And it's time for This Week in Fancy, I think.
It is time for This Week in Fancy, Trae. And you know what, man? Again, we don't, I'm not going to talk about American politics, but I will say, considering American politics, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, have been quite a doozy for the past 9 days. It was kind of wonderful for me to check out what was going on across the pond and see what constitutes news over there, because it's way less crazy. You know what I mean? No matter what is going on Earth, their front page of news still has at least a modicum of whimsy. You know what I mean? Which I super love. And I'm going to get to right meow. All right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This right here, Trae, in our first story, you're going to love this. Love Island star freed in dangerous dog case. I don't know if you're familiar with Love Island. I assume it's one of their bachelor type shows over there.
Yeah, it's huge over there. So I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm still going to say it because it's me who doesn't hit here. Although I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, no, you shouldn't have. Anyway, that show I know started in England, I reckon, and it's like one of their biggest reality shows. It's huge over there,
right? And
they, of course, wanted to make an American version of it, and I think they did, and I think it has now gone for multiple seasons. But we no idea why, whose idea this was, or whatever. When they were putting together the American version of Love Island, I got contacted through Gersh because
I remember this.
They were like, "Hey, we're going to make an American version of Love Island, and we're interested in you maybe hosting it."
Yeah,
right?
I remember that. Such a dumb idea.
Such a bad idea on their part. But here's the thing: I've been through this before with other things, and it's like they just tell you we're interested in you hosting it. What they don't tell you is they're saying that to multiple people all at once.
Of course,
and so. Even if I had said yes, I almost certainly still would not have even gotten the job. They would have went with somebody else anyway. But at the time, I was like, I mean, that's pretty far beneath me.
Yeah, right.
I think like
I mean, it is.
I didn't say that, but I did say no. I did say no, thank you. I'm not interested because I was like, that's just not a good fit for me. I don't hit on an island. Barely. I mean, I'm like. boring suburban vanilla white love, sure, but
Right.
like sexy island love, that ain't me.
Right.
So I said no, and then
little did you know nothing would happen that could have prevented you from having time to do it. You should have just tried,
Right. Well, right after that, the pandemic happened, and I didn't work at all basically for like 18 months. Damn near ran out of money. Thought everything was over, and I was like, man, I really should have took that Love Island job.
Yeah.
But anyway, now it's all fine, and I don't even know if the American version is still. But I know they made multiple seasons of it, so whoever did end up hosting it, definitely it was a pretty sweet gig for them. But yeah, so that's my
that's
Love
funny
Island
you say
story.
that. I also turned down something, which I'm not going to get into because it's a whole can of worms. I turned down something
I
on.
shouldn't have been.
No.
I probably shouldn't have said all that.
No, dude. What you just said is a
because whoever does host it, I'm sure they hit and they got it.
Dude,
again. They would have got it anyway. I'm not saying,
that's not a can of worms. Mine, I'll tell you off air.
Told me no, but
I'll tell you off air. Mine is a fucking real can of worms. But I turned it down on moral grounds. And this was actually going to be a reality show, like based on me that they were whatever. I turned it down on moral grounds, and then the pandemic happened, and I too was like, I don't feel too bad about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe I should have done that shit. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so yeah, that's Love Island. Well, this guy, and this is really going to hit for you, Trae. Former Love Island winner Jack Fincham has been released from prison within hours of being sentenced for dangerous dog offenses. Right. So. Yeah. All that happened was the 32-year-old's black cane Corso, it bit a runner in September 2022.
Oh, was that all that happened?
Well, yeah.
That's it? That's all that happened? He should go to jail, and the dog should be put down immediately. That's what should happen, Joe. You're really downplaying this.
You know
what a cane Corso is? You ever seen a cane Corso?
This is
monstrous beast of a fucking dog.
This is really funny, because I thought this was going to go the opposite way, but I should have known that this is how this would go with you.
Yeah. If you got a dog that could rip somebody apart, and you take it out in public, and you have not trained it or otherwise prevented it from attacking people, that's a fucking problem.
For the record,
that thing could get a hold of a toddler and rip their fucking throat out or whatever.
For the record, I agree. And now that I'm looking down here, and he was only sentenced to 6 weeks in prison, I'm actually all the way back on your team, right?
Again, dude, do you know what a cane Corso is?
No, I actually don't. Will you pull up a picture?
I've got one pulled up.
I
mean, they're rad looking, but they're also fucking terrifying. In my opinion.
Show me.
Okay.
No, I'm back on your team now. You know what happened? I literally saw dog crimes and was like, this will get Trae stirred up. But you're making really good. Oh yeah, dude, that's like an African pit bull.
Yeah. Look, they got a chain around any dog. They put a big ass chain on like that. Yeah. You can't let that motherfucker bite people.
No, I agree with you. And now that I have a kid,
I'm
things are like
imagine
way
it was a
different.
Little kid.
Yeah, like
we killed it.
No, that's true.
Easily.
We dog sit for my friends and their dog Annie, who the internet loves Annie. She's a star. I put videos up of her all the time, and she's very, very nice. And she would not ever hurt me. Like, she growls and like kind of barks, but she would never go the extra step, because I've seen her. However, like when she's with Bane, the part of my brain that knows she wouldn't isn't activated. It's just the part of my brain that's like, did you just snap at my fucking child? And there's this dog who I love more than anything. And I'm like, I think about that Tom Segura bit, and I'm like, I'll drown you right now. But like, you're right. I guess before I just read the headline was like, oh, some dog just bit a person and this dude's going to jail. Get the fuck out of here. He should just give this person money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't, again, did they allow the dog to live? Is that covered in the article?
Let's see.
Because a lot of times, dude, I mean, at least in America, if a dog bites
put the dog down,
they will put that motherfucker straight down.
He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of being in charge of a dangerously out of control dog. He was sentenced to 6 weeks in prison. Fincham worked as a pen salesman, but won the. Let's see. His dog, named Elvis, they cautioned that the dog needed to be muzzled. He was prosecuted. He was ordered to pay £3,680 in total, including a $2,000 contribution to kenneling costs. Richard Cooper for Fincham said his client had no savings. That dude was broke after hosting that show. I mean, obviously, I know how that can happen. She made an order that the dog must be muzzled in public places, be kept on a lead, and not to be left alone. No, they didn't kill the dog. Yeah, we would have fucking killed that dog over here, 100%.
Yeah. So for sure, just a little side note, I went and looked. The American Love Island went on for multiple seasons and still is going, and the actual host of it have been 3 pretty blonde women from other reality shows, and that is a way better choice than
way
my dumpy
better
ass. Like, I don't know what that producer was there. They probably got fired for even bringing me up. But a chick that looks good in a bikini hosting Love Island that makes sense.
That's an instance of where like I'm not like, I love it when shows make social causes an important part of their narrative. I mean, every superhero since the dawn of time has done that. It's nothing new, but now it's called woke, right? And so I'm obviously not against shows being more progressive and trying things that they otherwise wouldn't do. That said, in a show like this, got no business. Make it a hot blonde lady. Like, just don't ever get rid of that formula, because like the people that watch these type of shows, that's why they're watching it. You know what I mean? And I kind of feel the same way about like Maxim magazine and Playboy. It's like, no, your fat ass don't get to be on the cover of that shit, because that's for, you know what I mean? I'm just, look, get your own fucking go Lane Bryant or Talbot's or something. That shit. That magazine is for girls who vomit 4 times a day because they want it. You know what I mean? And the dudes want to see a girl who will vomit 4 times a day. They don't want to see your fat ass. They don't want to see my fat ass either. By the way, I'd love to see your fat ass.
I was about to say, to be fair,
yeah, I would.
A lot of times, like plus size models are just like thicker than a bowl of oatmeal.
They're my favorite.
And there's a lot of dudes who, and I don't just mean black guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys like CHO and black guys.
I prefer them.
And me, hell, you know.
I'm talking about lard asses, though. Yeah.
But Katie, if you listen to this episode, obviously Katie was not at all plus size.
No, she would. Hold on. That's the problem. She would be considered that.
Yes, but so I'm saying, you know, a lot of dudes fuck with that and roll that way. So, you know.
I'm talking about disgusting fat fucks that are trying to become models. All right.
Well, I'm not talking about.
I'm not
we can all agree that should never be allowed. The Congress should make that illegal, obviously.
Yeah. Like, dude, the thing is, it's like, it don't matter how much you weigh, it's what weighs what and where it is. Cause like, dude, there's like, okay, I'm 220 and I look like shit. There's plenty of 220. There's plenty of 220 women who are like 6'3" and it's all tits and butt. And it's like, dude, they look amazing. So weight is not a thing here. Just saying, like, you still got to be hot, like, or you don't get to be on a magazine. Because if we're just putting anybody on the magazine, what's the point of trying to get on the magazine? That's all I'll say about that. I'm sorry, everybody. And yes, I'm fat and hideous. So I feel like I can say this. Here's another one. Trae, we've talked about them. We've talked about them before. I don't have a lot on this, but I did want to bring it up since they have been featured on this show. Lloyd's is set to close 136 branches as people shift to apps. So that's Lloyd's Bank, which is associated with the famous Lloyd's of London, which has been shortened to Lloyd's. As I mentioned to you in that one episode, they are the insurance people to the wrestlers and also to the super rich.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, remember? And so they're shutting down 136 branches by March because everybody's doing, day-to-day digital banking or whatever, which, like, I have to assume that's, like, going to just fuck over employees, not Lloyd's at large. You know what I mean?
But... yeah, but having said that,
which sucks.
Every time I see a brick and mortar bank, in my head, I'm like, who the fuck is still going to the bank? I guess
do every now and then.
Papa's, yeah, but you got a horse bank.
I do, and the guy that runs it, I like him, and it's right by the gas station where I get my kratom. So sometimes I'll just cash a check.
I used to have to go to the bank all the time. We all did for all kinds of stuff. But I've had the bank I use, I've had their app on my phone for a decade now or close to it, and I haven't been in a bank and I don't know how long. Like, so that don't surprise me at all. Again, it's not just banks. I remember people were saying years ago, like when Amazon was first becoming a thing and all this stuff, people were like, you know, they're like, this is going to be a paradigm shift. They're like, brick and mortar stores ain't even going to exist anymore. Like, they're all going to be gone. It's going to be 100% online. That's what everybody thought. And that, you know, they do still exist. They are still around in more numbers than I would have thought. I'm kind of surprised at the number.
It won't be long.
But dude, how much? I mean, it's been a long time now since the rise of online shopping.
I know.
We've got to be 15 plus years into it, and they're still there. So
they are still there, but the number of them is far fewer. Like,
right. But I feel like it's kind of normalized now. I feel like a lot of them went under when it first became a thing, and then it kind of leveled out. And I feel like they're at a plateau sort of at this point.
I could make sure, and I kind of want to believe you because
you know why, Cho? Do you know why they're still around?
Why?
One of the fundamental laws of the universe. I think we all know it to be true.
Women be shopping.
Exactly. I knew you'd get
God, son, we're fucking.
Women do be shopping.
They do be shopping,
even with not Amazon too. New Amazon box shows up at my house every other goddamn day. But she still loved to take her ass to Target and wherever else, and just walk around and do woman stuff. As long as there's white women in the world, there will be brick and mortar stores, I think.
It's
only white women. It's just my wife.
No, it's me too. It's white men. It's me too. Because now, if I have shopped at your store at a brick and mortar before, tried on your clothes, and I know a large is good for me there, then I would order some stuff from you online. But when I am clothes shopping, I do tend to prefer brick and mortar because certain clothes lay different on you. You know what I mean? I can't look at the mannequin because the mannequins are all fucking jacked. Of course it looks good on them. But Eddie Bauer specifically, it's I could order from them because I know their shirts fall really good on me, but I can't just be blanketly ordering shirts, especially dress shirts online without knowing if it's my chest hits because, whatever. Mm-hmm. Did you know that there's a dude who he's there's several of them, but he's kind of the main dude. We'll have to talk about this on next week's episode, where he's the guy that all of the sizes are based on. There's one guy who's the prominent model for when companies make their sizes, they tailor it to this guy, and then they stretch it out for everybody else.
I'm not surprised that they did that to begin with, to come up with the universal sizing system or whatever, but I would have thought that would have been decades ago, and that one dude was long dead.
No, they constantly have a dude. There's a guy right now.
Well, once they set what the sizes are, don't those sizes just mean
when they get
dimensions forever?
Yes, but when they make a new style of shirt or whatever, and it's going to naturally lay different, they put it on this guy as their canvas and make it fit to him because he has the perfect structure or whatever. They have it because again,
the other thing I don't get about that is you couldn't just use a mannequin for that. Give a mannequin any dimensions. I mean, they can't move. I guess
right. That's why they have to know where's the pocket holes. Can you and they do it to this guy.
How often are they coming out with new shirts?
A lot. They come out with new different types of shirts, especially now, with the advent of all these different lycra fibers and stuff. And I'm not saying he's busy all the time. I'm just saying there's a fucking guy. I've seen it. And basically, so whatever size he is, when he goes to most stores, a medium it will look tailor made on him because it was made for him. Any fucking way. Last thing before I get into the meat of the episode, this was the thing where I was.
We're more than an hour in.
Or whatever. What are you going to do?
No, it's been hitting. It's been a good episode, in my opinion.
This is the thing. This is the thing.
Goddamn, we ain't even to the meat yet. Anyway.
We're not, which it's fine because I already knew I was going to have to do another parter next week. So whatever. This was the one where I was goddamn, even when I think it's about to be some shit, it's just silly. Over there because I see the headline that is hold on, why can't I share this shit? Share, goddammit. Share screen. There we go. I saw this headline: Prince William sprays water at press during visit to firm, and I was like, oh shit, but it's he did it to hit. He's over there.
You thought he was you'd wait for me, scum.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm so conditioned to American politics and shit.
Yeah.
That
also,
I just,
I didn't know. Was this fund sanctioned by the Crown? This particular fund that he had? Did he have to, was this scheduled? This fund?
It's, that's
according to protocol, this fund that he had?
Let's see. the Prince of Wales said that this was the best day of his life when he was encouraged to spray
What
pond
a jolly.
It makes me think.
Spraying the water to and fro. Have you ever had such a lark?
Like this guy, like his whole life,
Yeah.
his whole fucking life has just been prepping him for the crown while watching the MI6 murder his mother and his grandmother do it. And so they give him a fucking water gun and he's like, oh, lovely, brilliant. And this, please pull it up while I'm talking, but this reminds me of that picture of fucking, was it Edward the Seventh or somebody who like, he's fucking.
A water slide?
They've got him going down the water slide and the look on his face is just like, can't be bothered to even accidentally have fun. So Prince William visited the Guildford-based company Nature Metrics, which was a finalist in his Earthshot Prize. He's going there to learn more about analyzing the environmental data to provide clients with a comprehensive map of life in a forest. You know, like this is his dad has always been a climate activist, and I guess that he's taken that up too. Which like that's like the only thing that I ever say positive about the monarchy is that like they're the only super rich fucking like elite people that actually give a shit about climate. Not only give a shit about climate change, admit that it's a real thing. Like nobody else would their
except
type
for my
of
close personal friend Al Gore, of course. And I'm not saying he's on the level of British royalty.
That's what I'm.
But he's definitely a rich and powerful person.
That's true. But I'm talking about people with billions of dollars. You know what I mean? Like literally none of them. Anybody that's in the top whatever percent of wealth, which like Al Gore's not. Don't get me wrong. I would if we had Al Gore's money right now, we could fuck off and not do shit forever. But I'm saying like,
Al Gore is definitely like part of the American elite. You know what I'm saying?
I'm talking about global elite.
The crown is still above that. Don't get me wrong, but like. He's like the next tier down in my opinion.
But I'm talking about like your Trumps and your Elons and your those types. You know what I mean? The literal billionaires who are controlling things, who are controlling because they have over in the monarch has more of a symbolic role of power, but like they still, as I mentioned on that one episode I did on them, they could do a lot more shit than they do. That's like voluntary that they're more symbolic. But like he's always been on his shit about climate change, which like I respect. William aimed let's see. Prince William visited so he aimed a syringe full of cloudy water at photographers and journalists when he joined school children collecting DNA samples. So he's just hanging out with kids. It does, yeah.
At a crime scene, there's like a dead body there. Kids are
his uncle
blood and shit.
Yeah, his uncle also collected DNA samples from children, and it did not fucking. That is a different thing. But anyways, I just thought that was so silly. Like the best day of my life.
Yeah, it's silly. It's very silly.
It's so silly.
Sorry, I couldn't find. I know the picture you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I can't find it. I googled British royal going down water slide, nobleman going down water slide. I can't find it.
That's okay.
Unfortunately, because that picture does hit.
We're going to take one more small break, and then we will be right back where I will be talking about Trae. Do you have any fucking idea?
We're continuing Aaron Burr discussions, aren't we?
Goddamn right, son. We're going to talk about
part one of what is turning out to be 7 or 8 parts, I would imagine, at the rate
this
we're
is
going.
Part 2.
Part 2. No, I mean part 2.
Yes. Yeah, this is part 2. Okay, we'll be right back.
Have better sex with Blue Chew. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets. These erection-enhancing tablets help men achieve stronger, harder, longer-lasting, pulsing, throbbing, big old boner erections for sexual activities. Blue Chew is putting its money where its mouth is and offering you a month free. The process is simple. You sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the good old US of A, prepared and shipped directly to your door. You can take them anytime you want to, day or night. So you can plan ahead to get down, or you can just be ready to get down whenever an opportunity comes up. The best part of the whole thing, it's done on the internet there, which means no more visits to the doctor's office having awkward wiener conversations, no more waiting in line for your dick pills at the pharmacy, running into your old high school driver's ed teacher, nothing like that. Joe, you're a big fan of Blue Chew.
Absolutely love it, Trae. And a lot of people always ask me, they're like, Corey, does it work? And I'm like, dude, it makes my dick harder than keeping my sanity while scrolling through the litany of depression that accrues daily on my social media timelines. You know what I'm saying, man? That is hard. I've been using them for, I don't know, 5, 6 years now. Hell, maybe even longer. I don't know. Time flies when you're blowing backs out with a hard wiener. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing. A lot of people were like, but I don't have issues down there. Like, I don't either. Mine works totally just fine. It's just like, I want a little performance enhancer. Why wouldn't you do that? You know, sometimes it's not that you actually have an issue. It's like, hey, it'll be a spur of the moment thing. I got kids. We got family stuff going on. We might only have this one opportunity. And sometimes my wiener, he just on a different, you know, we've talked about time on this show and like time zones. My wiener's sometime on a different time zone than me. But Blue Chew sets our clocks correct, son. And I don't have to go see my pharmacist, who I do know. I've pointed it out. It's just great. I love when that white envelope shows up. My wife loves it even more. Make life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. You're on visit BlueChew.com. And I believe use the promo code POA, baby, as always. And you're going to get it for free. It don't hurt anything. It can't hurt. Just do it. Get a hard wiener. Tell them, Trae.
Yeah. Get your new dick.
Get your new dick. Why wouldn't you?
And we're back, everybody.
Fuck you, by the way, for that.
What?
Well,
For what?
Part 2 of what's turning out to be.
I don't hit for you?
No, what do you mean? It's just that we don't ever get to, like, again, it's just funny to me. You're more than an hour into a podcast and you're like, we got the meat of this thing coming up. And it's just, you know.
We do an hour 30 here.
It's
we
been
can go
fun,
a little further.
But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, well, let's go. Let's go with part 2.
Okay, so when I left off, Trae, I was mainly talking about, I didn't just share my fucking screen, did I? No. I was mainly talking about, you know, some of the things that the musical got wrong about Aaron Burr. And that's pretty much where I left it. I wanted to just get all that shit out there that, you know, just because there's a, you know, hitting musical doesn't mean that everything in there is factually correct. Now, we had also mentioned the fact that, like, well, what?
That's also, well, that's kind of a funny sentence. Just because
it
it's
is,
a hit musical doesn't mean everything in it is factually correct. It's like, well, I don't think most people are making that assumption about hit musicals.
Yes, I think most people are, yeah.
Hamilton specifically?
Most people.
Perhaps.
You got to understand who most people are.
Yeah, but just the idea that it's like, I know everybody assumes that if there's some hidden musical that its word is gospel.
Like Cats?
Yeah, right, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Cats,
that's fair.
I'm just saying any musical. I don't just mean Hamilton. Like,
yeah,
the idea that like musicals are known for their, you know, historical accuracy or whatever. Let me
rephrase it. I do think most people, when they see a biopic or in this case a musical based on a historical figure, they do assume, hey, this was well researched. And while they probably stretch some things, there's no outright lies. You know what I'm saying? I think most people, because again, we're talking about most people, and I include myself in this. Most people are fucking idiots. Right? Like there's not, most people will just see the thing and that will be the end of it. Whereas I'm like, absolutely not. I must know everything. I must know more, you know?
Yeah. Me, after, you know, for years now, most of my adulthood, whenever I see something that's purported to be a true story and something wild happens in it, I'm always like, did that shit really happen? Like, I'm always like, assume that they've taken creative license or whatever. And it's like, because also it's like, you know, you got shit like the Coen brothers when they made Fargo, right? Which was like, they were already hot shit, but they really elevated with Fargo, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And then when they made Fargo, and that movie starts with,
this is based on a true story. And it's not.
They were just like, I'd make it hit harder. You know?
Right.
But nobody's saying we can't just put those words at the start of this movie.
Not illegal.
Is that against the rules? No. Let's just do it. It'll make it hit harder. And they did. And it was just completely made up. And then every season of that show, which also
based on true
mega hits.
Yeah.
Every season of that show starts off with the same words. It's based on true story. They're all made up, completely fabricated. So, and then I'm watching, I know you've seen it. I'm watching Rogue Heroes about the founding of the British SAS. And it says, this is based on a true story. Those events that seem most unbelievable are actually mostly true, right?
Right.
And I, like last night,
it goes the opposite, though.
Do what?
It's kind of the opposite, though.
What do you mean?
there, if you read the actual story, there's shit that's even crazier that really happened that they didn't show.
I know that's what I was about to say. It's
Okay,
like
right
it
on.
is like so like even though it says that, it's like you can't trust what these shows say or tell you. So like I watched an episode last night or the night before where they are joined on this crazy fucking black op nighttime raid
through the desert
by in Benghazi.
Yeah,
so, you know, fucking Hillary's favorite spot, Hillary and Charlie Daniels' favorite spot, but in Benghazi,
that man died without getting answers, didn't he?
Yep. Man, he said it wouldn't go away. Guess what? Charlie's ghost.
It did.
It went away, you dumb fat
You
fuck.
piece
You
of shit.
dumb fat dead fuck. Sorry. No disrespect.
Also,
obviously, this music does hit for me, you know. Well,
it does hit, but by the way, the devil 100% won that. Go ahead.
they're the specifics of this raid are nut. It's just crazy dangerous, insane. They attempted it, and also I kind of pulled it off and whatever. But they're not only that, they're joined on this raid by fucking Winston Churchill's son, right? And I was like, there ain't no fucking what Winston Churchill's son went on a mission like legitimately, and I looked it up, and he damn sure did. They fucking it really happened. And so anyway, you just never know what is and is not true. But
you don't,
especially with musicals,
of course, and that's why you've got
especially a musical where all the founding fathers are bros, you know, and rap.
Absolutely, and that's why you must come to me.
Yes.
Now, as we've said a lot, come here not for to learn, come here for to hit. And I still, even though I've taken extensive notes, I still maintain that. And I would also like to plug a show that has been very good to us and a show that I very much love. Dave Anthony of The Dollop, and I haven't listened to the whole thing yet. I just know it was pointed out to me in airmail. Someone's like, "Did you know that The Dollop did a 4-parter on Aaron Burr?" And I was like, "I mean, I didn't, but I would have guessed that they did. Like, of course." So if you want even more on this shit, please go listen to The Dollop, which you should be doing anyways, because Dave Anthony, I am not. I go, he's fucking right by the book. I sort of see some stuff, and I just sort of go into business for myself. But anyways, I was talking about all the things that they sort of got wrong. Obviously, one thing that they got right is that Aaron Burr and Hamilton did not hit for each other. Matter of fact, and this is what I want to start with before I get into Aaron Burr's childhood. I wanted to start with a couple things today. What's interesting to me is like when you read about Aaron Burr and Hamilton not getting along, right? And you start pulling that thread on like, well, what was his relationship like with everybody else, And it's like he kind of didn't hit for anybody. But in the musical, one part, like the musical kind of makes that clear. Like, hey, Aaron Burr's sort of his own thing. But the musical sort of makes it seem like Aaron Burr, they go, oh, he doesn't, you never know where he stands. Like, he doesn't really ever take a position. He's sort of just like wherever the wind blows. You know what I mean? Aaron Burr kept his ideas like very close to his chest. And I'm sure that's one interpretation of it, sure. But as much as I'm reading, I think it would be more accurately stated that, like, no, it's that Aaron Burr didn't toe the party line that y'all all wanted him to. Like, he was with y'all on a lot of things, but there were some things he was like, yeah, I don't agree with that. And they were all like, but that's what our party is. And he's like, I hear you, but I don't agree with that part of it. And it didn't hit for them. And so to them, they were like, this guy doesn't take a stand on anything. And it's like, actually, he was the only one that was taking a stand on something. Like, he didn't accept, like, he didn't really feel like he belonged to the Federalists because he had a lot of what would end up the Democratic Republicans or whatever when they were, he's like, I have a lot of their opinions. I don't really fit with them because I have a lot of Federalist opinions. There's not a party for me. So I guess I'll have to go with the one I most feel. And it's this one. But he was very vocal about, I don't.
The John Fetterman of his day, sounds like.
Yes. And it's really funny because like
ogreish dipshit who dresses funny.
Okay, sure.
Dipshit looking guy. Sorry.
No, actually
Fetterman's not a dipshit, but he does look like one.
He's acting like one. He does. Yeah. No. Actually, dude, Aaron Burr, we didn't get into this last time. Aaron Burr was actually like
sharp dressed man.
dude, like fucking with eyes like Cal Ripken eyes. You know what I mean? Like it was written about a lot, just specifically about like his gaze.
Yeah,
you know what I
mean?
mean?
All sharp dressed back then, right?
They were definitely all sharp dressed men. I mean, that
be.
was, you know, I mean, nowadays they would be considered cross dressing queers that need to be thrown into a cage because they wore fucking pantyhose and dresses and shit and wigs and makeup. Like the founders of our country did these things, and now it's just a sin, you know. But no, he was, you know, back then, like a dude's calves was his dick, you know, or the
dude's what was his dick?
A dude's calf muscles was like their dick, or like the titties of the leg, you know.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I said
you wrote that joke
bit
for me.
That I wrote for you. Yeah, the joke.
Yeah, but yours wasn't about the revolution, the founding fathers. Yours was just
Canadian
like
bacon. Right?
You said,
like,
you go. You can't just
call calves the titties of the leg. It's like Canadian bacon ain't bacon. It's fine, but it ain't bacon. It's like calling a woman's calves her lower titties.
Her
it's
lower
like,
titties.
They're fine, but they ain't titties.
Titties, and by the way,
something like that
joke worked. I'm going to bring that back. Actually, Trae wrote that for me as a "this is how dumb you are" thing. Like he did, just so everybody knows.
He was
like he wasn't like, hey, I thought of a thing, but I can't use it here. He specifically was like, what's the dumbest fucking thing I can think of? And it sounds like one of Corey's jokes. And he wrote that, and then I did it on stage. Murdered.
He was having a going away thing, is what it was. And I was like, this is my going away present to you. I've written a Corey Forrester. I've written a bit in the style of Corey Forrester, and it involved
also
a titty bacon bit. Anyway.
So hilarious that you're like, I know what I'll get him for going away. The power of my pen.
Yeah.
I will gift to him one of my tomes.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Anyways, like, okay, with Fetterman, you know, I don't know where the fuck I put this thing. With Fetterman, like, I get why you're like, oh yeah, those types of people, whatever. But like, in principle, that's a good thing. Like, it's a good thing to be like, hey, I'm not just like,
well, I mean, look, dude, even with Fetterman, again, I know, you know, this ain't politics on this show.
If that's how he feels, good for him.
To be, right. That's what I was going to, even with him, it's like,
right.
He does what you're saying Aaron Burr did.
Right.
Like even if he has a position that's not in line with his party, like he don't pretend to not have it. He don't he says like this is what he, you know, I mean, he stands on business.
Right.
A lot of what his business is.
Don't hit for me.
I don't fuck with.
But the
like,
act.
You know, yeah. I mean, he has integrity in that way. Like he don't lie about what he really thinks about stuff. So, you know.
And I super respect that. And I'm going to get in.
Of course, he also got his brain smushed by stroke or whatever.
He did. Yeah. But I'm going to get into some of the things that Aaron Burr differed with than these people. And I think you will come to find out that he's sort of the opposite of Fetterman, you know, where it's like the core tenets of what his party believed, me and you probably wouldn't, but these offshoots that Aaron Burr believes is like, wow, damn. Go off. What an ally. You know what I'm saying? But to get into that, like I wanted to start by saying, like, you read all about these founding fathers and how like they all founded the country together. Like they came together, founded the country. So I think like at an elementary level or whatever you are in school, like you just go, these guys all agreed on everything. Like they were boys, they all agree. But like the reality is like, no, they didn't hardly agree on shit. The only thing they agreed on was fuck King George III. And that was enough. That was enough to start a revolution. You know, sort of like, I don't know, Democrats and liberals and then far leftists don't really agree on a lot of things, but don't elect Trump was enough to get everybody for a minute. And then when that's
not
over,
really.
No. You're right. The first time it was. The second time, it's literally why he lost. You know what I'm saying? But like these motherfuckers like founded the country, and then the second the country was founded, they were like, "You don't hit, you don't hit, you don't hit. Fuck you, you don't hit." Right? And it's so funny because like. All of them had their own vision for what the country should be. And as soon as someone's opinion differed from whatever it was that Washington was trying to do, they would be like, treason. And it's like, bro, we all just did a treason together. You can't fucking all of a sudden act like treason don't hit for you. You know what I mean? Because like that's a really funny thing about treason is that like treason is the one crime that is not universally hated it's only hated when it's against you. You know what I'm saying? Whereas like we hate murder.
Right. It's also
we
just
hate
like
murder
whether you win or not.
Win, right?
You know what I mean? Like it's too much politics. But we're talking about the American founders.
Yeah,
so I
we
just
can
keep
talk
drawing
about their politics.
parallels to the present day. So like, you know, all them January 6 people, they just all got out of jail, right?
Right. And started doing kid porn and getting shot.
Yeah, right. As they are wont to do. But they're you know, because their guy won again, and so it's like now it hits just fine what they did, you know, because they, you know, history's written by the victors and all that, and it's like the same thing with treason. It's like, you know, the Confederacy was obviously treasonous. We did not hit, we lost, so that's bad treason. But George Washington and them was also treason, but that's the hidden treason,
right?
Because you know, they won, and now America. So
yeah,
you know, treason is very contextual that
putting
way.
some of that treason and seasoning on the fucking colonies, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they couldn't. So it's like, dude, like I look at everything. You're like, why can't we all come together, you know, in this country? And it's like, motherfucker, the 13 some bitches that made this country hated each other and couldn't come together on shit. Why would you ever think that we would not? Like, immediately, this country's founded, and then you've got all these people are being accused of treasons. The parties break up. There's the War of 1812, and then not that long after that's a civil war. It's like we became a country and have been trying to tear ourselves asunder for the entirety of the country. It's never stopped. Like, nothing is new. It's never stopped. Also, like, the whole, like, you know, we're talking about, oh, nowadays you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. Like, that was going on with the second presidential election. You know what I mean? Like, Burr, not the second or third, I guess, when like Burr and Jefferson were like running against each other, and like a lot of people like didn't fucking like Burr, but they thought that he represented the Federalist Party more than maybe Jefferson did. So even though they fucking hated both of them, they were like, we're going to support this guy. So it's like, even when we first started having elections, there was already a unanimous agreement that like, we don't like either of them, but we got to pick one. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So anyways, I just wanted to sort of set that tone for, you know, my little entree into Aaron Burr. And by the way, for those of you that subscribe to WeLoveCorey.com, I'm taking my notes and I'm attempting to turn them into essays so that you can read what I talked about on this podcast. That'll be nice. So Aaron Burr's early life, Trae, was marked by both privilege and tragedy, setting the stage for his fiercely independent and ambitious nature. He's born in 1756 in Newark, New Jersey. He's the son of Aaron Burr Sr., who was the second president of what is now Princeton University. So he's born upper crust, fancy ass. His mom, Esther Edwards Burr, she was a very, very cultured daughter. Like, she was a woman. She was as educated as a woman could be back then. You know what I mean? Her dad was a very famous preacher named Jonathan Edwards. So you've got his father is the president of Princeton, and his mom's daddy is a freaking countrywide famous preacher. Basically, two of the most powerful positions that you could have in the country at that time. He's born into it. They're part of the intellectual elite of the colonies. Huge religious family, also very academic. That was, I guess, back when that you could be both. Nowadays, it seems like you're either one or the other, you know. But back then, like, even the super, back then, even the super intellectual people believed in God, because I guess they haven't been given any evidence that he don't exist. Like, you know, we had Hitchens. They didn't have a Hitchens, I guess.
For a long time, you know, we've said before when we were talking about art that God's early shit was great, you know, and it actually goes for like science and academia and stuff like that too. For a long time, the church spearheaded a lot of
that's true
of human advancement and knowledge and stuff. And I mean, still nowadays, you're right. It is, especially in America, it does seem like you're either one or the other generally, but there's still like a religious, intellectual faction, and you know, like the Jesuits, right? They're hardcore intellectuals and academics, and they traffic with the Lord. But generally, if you gonna if you into God, learning don't hit for you,
right? And please understand that I don't mean that there aren't any smart religious people. There are. It's just that like if you're super religious, you're probably not also seeking a life of learn. Like you're not seeking intellectualism. Like they don't do, like you can be a smart Christian, but like people nowadays who are like striving for intellectualism usually completely disregard
along the way. They're like, well, clearly, God
there's no way.
Yeah,
right. and I'm certain that like the church probably, I've never really thought about this, but you're right that the church used to spearhead a lot of science because this was back before science was used to disprove the church. And I'm sure that like they were spearheading it, and then like those scientists they were funding, like all of a sudden they were like, hey, and they were like, all right, you're cut off. Draw us some dicks.
Right. Because I feel like it was the type of thing where it's like, what about that big ball in the sky? Is that God? Is that God doing that thing? And then like science eventually is like, no, it's a big thing of gas. Thing got nothing to do with God. And they're like, you sure? No, I'm pretty sure that was a God thing. Or, or the equivalent. Like it was that type of deal. They definitely spent a lot of money and resources on like trying to find or establish like actual proof of the existence of God and shit like that. So,
not realizing that they would be hoisted by their own petard. Probably also Shakespeare. He made that up. When
you're probably right.
It had to be right. That's to him. So he's born into this great family, but by the time Burr is 2, both of his parents are dead.
You'll have that back then.
You will have that. They were victims of disease, as you would have. I actually didn't.
Naturally.
I didn't investigate further what the disease was because it
probably,
just kind of
I'm guessing either pooped or coughed to death. That's my guess.
Yeah, pooped or coughed. Isn't it wild that back then you couldn't live one day the way I've lived 30 days in a row and live? Like if you had diarrhea once, you could die. You know what I mean? Like you could
yourself to death. Yeah,
you get diarrhea, and then by the time you're through having diarrhea, you're dead. Whereas like
dead.
I just fucking live my whole life with it and am good to go because we've got Powerade. You know what I mean? Like we've got Powerade, so I can just have diarrhea all the time. So yeah, him and his older sister Sally were sent to live with their uncle was very well connected, very strict. He raised them in, he was very disciplined. He had a lot of high expectations for them, and he was constantly challenging them like intellectually. And Burr, really, when he's young, sort of like young Sheldon-y, sort of like displays like, holy shit, this kid's like, he's not just smart for a kid. He's kind of just like smart. So like at 11 years old, he applied to Princeton where his father used to be the president, and he was rejected, but it was literally just for being too young. Like they were like, you absolutely, you're as smart as anyone here, but like we can't fucking have an 11-year-old. Like we just can't do that. So they make him wait for 2 more years. He reapplies at 13 and he's admitted and becomes one of the best students of his entire generation besides age, which like, who knows what their curriculum was. 13 was a lot different then than it is now. You know what I'm saying?
So the whole concept of schools and everything was different than it wasn't. Like there's definitely no standard like you go to high school until you're 18 and then start college. Like that ain't how that shit used to work back then. They'd just go. They'd have a tutor.
Most people just didn't. Yeah,
most people just didn't do it at all. And if you're like privileged, you'd have a personal tutor, I would imagine. And I think they probably just like, I'm pulling all this out of my ass, but like they just teach them some numbers and shit until a certain point where they're like, yeah, you can go to college now. And then the few colleges that were renting, then you could like apply to it. And if you got in, then you just went. Not you could be like 16, 19, 20, whatever, There's a lot more loosey-goosey back then, I believe.
So my point was like, I don't know exactly how to be impressed by all that. However, like he did, like when he was 13, he completed a 4-year curriculum in 2 years. And that was basically unheard of. Like even when I try to look it up for shit back then, it's like no one of note did that. Like, so like, yeah, sure. That it might not have been as hard to get into Princeton back then. However, even in all that, he did a thing that most people did not do, and he was only 13.
I would love to know what the equivalent of Princeton curriculum back then to like today would be? Like, we talking like
University of Phoenix,
right? Is that what we're talking about?
I mean,
like
I don't
that,
know.
or like community college, or like Miami or Michigan,
Right.
or is it
Maybe
still Princeton? Or
right.
is it high school, like a
mean,
good high school? Like,
sure.
I'm curious. I'd love to know how that shakes out.
Right. No matter what it is
It's
now,
still impressive because it's
was
relative to his time.
Of course, and Princeton still was the was the Princeton of that time too. So like, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but like, regardless, if we're talking about like in whatever in context, it was still Princeton.
The vast majority of people, like you said, couldn't read.
Right?
Like nothing. Ain't no words. So he's doing a lot better than most people.
As often happens to even the millennials and the young Gen Z queers of our time, when he's at Princeton, he developed a deep interest in Enlightenment philosophy, ideas about power, personal ambition, self-determination. He really had, just sort of like a coming on, like, oh, I'm
and
my
he
own
had
man.
no Joe Rogan podcast to listen
None.
to. So,
None.
what was he doing to scratch that itch? Reading books like a fairy?
Yes.
but it's such a thing with like young dudes. I'm not saying young girls or women don't have it too. I wouldn't know, but
they're not as annoying about it.
I know that, but yeah, dude, that's exactly what Rogan has tapped into, and so many of those guys that do it, because it's like I was 100% that way. Like every dude who has half a brain at all, you go through at least a phase where you're like, I'm a learned intellectual. I'm like a philosopher warrior. I lift weights and read
especially
books.
if you're a comedian.
I'm a true, I'm masculinity defined, doing things that really make a well-rounded man. You think that shit.
I'm very lucky.
And then Earth and life just beats all that out of you, usually, unless you're a real, piece of work.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm actually a very fortunate case, because I'm currently in that part of my life, but life had already beaten me to death first. And also, because I'm older and wiser, I'm aware that I know way less than I don't know, and that I'm an idiot in the grand scheme of things. But like, I am certainly reaching my quest for knowledge has never been greater, and I genuinely love it. I love reading books. I love diving into like the things that nobody really cares about, but I want to know more details of. But now versus if I had been this way in my 20s, I don't think it makes me better than anybody. I think it makes me curious. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, he was deeply influenced by the greats, which the greats of his time, I mean, they're still the greats of our time, but like Machiavelli, Voltaire, John Locke, reading all these lessons, reading all their meditations and stuff. And other kids, he's reading all this stuff from these like Roman leaders and Greek leaders, where like all of his buddies, his contemporaries, were reading literally shit from George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. Like they were like, no, just American dudes. These are the only ones that hit, which like, for the record, I don't know about Washington. I've never really read any of his thoughts. I've never really cared, because I was always just like, well, he was a military guy that won the war, and therefore he became president. It never occurred to me that he might be like, have provoking thoughts or whatever. But like, Franklin, inarguably one of the goats when it comes to that shit.
I mean, Ben Franklin's like one of history's all-time great polymaths, right? I mean, he's like kind of a Da Vinci of his time. I mean, Da Vinci's probably the goat of that category,
without question.
I would think. Wow, motherfucker, that Da Vinci. But Ben Franklin is on that same list though.
Who do you think we have right now? Because like, those dudes reading
Elon
about
Musk,
Franklin,
obviously he will go down with the with the legends.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, these guys are reading about Ben Franklin while Ben Franklin's still alive, which like, it's like, yeah, well, his shit still hit them. But like, to me, it's like we read about all these guys because we have the knowledge to know that their stuff stood the test of time. Like, because it's still around, and it's been fact checked by all these scholars. Like, we know Ben Franklin had some great shit to say. But when the person's still alive saying that great shit, you kind of just got to be like, I I rock with this. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a leap of faith. Like all the people like right now, like you're saying, Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, fucking Joe Rogan. Like I believe that history will show out to, hey, this was pseudoscience, snake oil bullshit, right? But right now, people are like, whatever. Who are the ones? Is there anybody now that like you think will stand the test? I don't either. Because
I mean, there's people who will live in history, whether in infamy
no, I mean
or not,
but that we put up there with
those dudes. I don't think we have anybody right now. Personally,
no, I don't either.
And I don't know that it's even still possible anymore. You know how things, it's like no one will ever have like the numbers like the Beatles had and that type of thing.
You can't.
Because things have changed too much. I think it might be like that too, because of what we were talking about earlier and what comes up all the time with how like the foundation of human knowledge has just grown so much. It's like now you kind of have to specialize in things and really be an expert. Dude, Leonardo da Vinci could like do thing. It would be like, if fucking like Christopher Nolan was like also the head of physics and energy at MIT or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like,
that's accurate.
I don't know that anybody will ever be that kind of thing again. I don't know if you can be.
Hedy Lamarr was kind of that, and she's not talked about enough. You know, like she really was. I know I did an episode.
She was one of the.
Yeah, I did an episode on her, but like obviously it didn't do her justice. But like it really is crazy that she's not talked about more. Because I mean, when you're comparing like a person that could do everything, like sex symbol, great actress, fucking helped invent Bluetooth. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, there's lesser versions of it that do. Brian May from Queen is a PhD rocket scientist or something like that. Do what?
He don't hear from me.
Like what? Well, over the whole Freddie Mercury in the movie stuff, or did he do something else?
He made the movie not hit, so he don't hear from me.
He did. I don't disagree with that, but I'm saying he was, one of the biggest rock bands of all time, and is also a PhD, a doctor of some kind of hidden smartness.
Good for him. Made a movie suck that I wanted to hit.
As far as his smart stuff,
what's his
shit?
Right. And
that's anybody ever read his shit? What has he really accomplished?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
that's another thing too. With like me and you talked about this on Well Read, but like with how exponential growth there is in the knowledge world, and like how now we can literally at our fingertips look up anything we want to or whatever, and this begets that and this begets that. It's hard to blow our fucking minds anymore. You know what I mean? Because maybe all the mind-blowing shit's done been said.
Thought of another one that will maybe hit you a little bit more, because I think he's cool. I think he hits. I remember Drew called him a Nazi for literally no reason once. But,
I love him already.
Dexter from The Offspring.
Oh, yeah, that dude rules.
He's a PhD biologist, I think.
Lundgren, too.
Dolph Lundgren, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
But no, the Offspring guy, like, he's tremendously smart, and like it actually makes me appreciate his music even more to go back and listen and be like, this fucking dude, he's on his shit.
See, but again, all these, so like, those dudes are all great, but Brian May don't hit for you, but I'm just saying, but like none of them are even approaching, like,
because there's too many now.
Leonardo
Maybe
da
that's
Vinci
it.
Or Ben Franklin, but Ben Franklin, he didn't really do art shit, right? But he still was a polymath because he was also like, he hit real hard at a whole bunch of different things, which is what a polymath is.
He don't do art. He don't do art, Trae. I'm sorry.
He wrote all that stuff about fat women and old pussy.
I'm sorry. This man wrote an entire treatise on farts. I don't know what you want to call that, but I call that art. And talked about how much fat women and farts hit. This is my hero, dog.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, we'll start. I'll start to wrap up here. I have a closing point that I want to get to before we move on to next week. But he had a super, like I said, he had a tragic childhood with his parents, dying or whatever. But he sort of finds himself through education. He considered theology before committing to, like, he wanted to be a lawyer, and he was a lawyer, and he was a great lawyer, and we'll get more into that later. He studied under this dude named Tapping Reeve, who was the most respected legal mind of the time. But in 1775, the American Revolution erupted, and Burr was like, I think I need to, this hits for me, and I think that I should join this. So next time we will get into his fight in the revolution and how he built himself up in the ranks. But before that, because I mentioned it earlier and I just want to get to it. I do want to explain to you all of his ideas that pissed off the people that I think is what made them say that, like, oh, he doesn't know who he is or whatever. This motherfucker was like pretty goddamn liberal, like in the modern sense. Like, I don't even mean like for his time. I mean like now. If he had some of these ideas, he would be considered a like he was staunchly for women having the right to vote when no one was. Like, dude, even at the time when women did get the vote, still most men were like, absolutely not. But obviously it passed because there was enough people. But like, fucking Civil War, nobody was for it. In the fucking revolution, like, it's insane that he even said it out loud. Like, it wasn't even a thing that was on the table. Yeah. Like, when he says this, women were like, I didn't even know we's up for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we can do that. But he was not only, like, how he felt about voting rights expanded into a lot of other things. Like, back then, as you know, the only people that could vote were landowners. Like, that was it. And it was like that for a while. And that was their argument for why black people couldn't vote. They're like, it has nothing to do with the color of their skin. It's just that landowners are the only ones that can vote. Well, dude, even before that, like, Aaron Burr, regardless, it wasn't even a black thing, even though he was a staunch abolitionist at a time when that was crazy, right? Which is one of the reasons that fucking Jefferson especially and Hamilton hated his ass, and perhaps Trae wrote a bunch of shit that wasn't true about him because he didn't think they should have slaves. He thought women should have the right to vote and he thought anybody, regardless of owning land, because he understood, like, well, look, man, like, in this country, that's really not that many people. You know what I mean? And he's like, if we only let the landowners vote, they only vote a certain way because they vote to serve their interests. And when they vote to serve their interests, it makes it way harder for non-landowners to ever own land. And it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy and a double-edged sword. You know, he's like, these people are never going to be able to own land as long as these elite landowners keep getting in power and making it to where, because they had a caste system, basically.
I'm sure it was, by design, you know.
Of course it was. And he knew that.
Just fine. Yeah. It's wild how much things change. Where I was like, it's a different time or whatever else. But it's like, you know, it's like this dude was the Karl Marx of his day, radical leftist, huge progressive. He thought women should vote.
Women should vote.
And slavery was bad. And it's like, and it was radical position back then, but that's what I'm saying. It's so wild.
I know.
And now it's like, all right.
Dude, do you know?
Even Nancy Mace thinks that shit or whatever. Well, I don't know. Maybe not, but.
Hold on. We're about to get into one where you're like, I can't believe, you know, that position that he had on landowning, the landowning elites need to be taken down a peg and everybody else needs to vote. You know, another person who that was their position as well, but it doesn't get talked about a lot. Oh, Hickory, Andrew Jackson.
Oh yeah,
Andrew Jackson. That was one of his like super progressive dude. If Andrew Jackson ain't
if he all
the
Indians
Indians with
kill
a stick,
all
like,
them
God
Indians.
Damn, son. Like, just it's so unfortunate. It's
it really is.
I know
Why did he have to kill all the Indians?
Dude,
man?
It's like, I don't want to erase stuff from history, but if I could take a Sharpie and I would erase all that just so we could make movies about him where he hit, because everything else,
I grew up in Tennessee, and at least when I was growing up in the 90s in Tennessee, that's pretty much what they did.
Oh, I know. Well, no, but the thing is, like,
that's the thing, dude. If you're from Tennessee, because it's like, because we've had 3 presidents. It's like one of them's a nothing burger, James K. Polk. One of them is arguably, even
the
in
worst
present times, the worst president
Andrew
that
Johnson.
ever lived, Andrew Johnson. And then the other one is Andrew Jackson. So he's the one that even remotely hits. He's on the $20 bill. He's like a very famous president. So like growing up in Tennessee, at least when I did, I was real proud of Andrew Jackson. I was very much taught in school, like, dude, Andrew Jackson's the fucking man, you know? Dude. And then you get older and realize, like, oh, Andrew Jackson don't hit for people.
Right.
Okay.
But
I didn't know that. You know,
by the way,
propagandized.
As you were saying, though, like, those people, either they take a eraser and erase that part, or that part is the part that hits the hardest for them. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, dude, Andrew Johnson, like, my God, dude, when we're talking about the Mount Rushmore of fuck up presidents, like, how you gonna be a Confederate sympathizer from Tennessee and fuck up Reconstruction that bad? Like, how? What are you fucking? That should be the thing you hit the hardest at. Anyways, so that was his position on that. He was all about women's rights and gender equality. Like, he thought women should be able to do everything that men did. Like, his wasn't even they should be able to vote, but they should still stay at home. No, like his daughter, matter of fact, it was his life's mission to educate his daughter as hardcore as he could so that she could prove that, like, a woman could be as intellectual as a man and do anything. Now, society just wouldn't let her do stuff, but like, you know, that was his thing. He truly believed, like, I don't understand why everyone thinks that women are lesser than us. Like, women, if anything, could be greater than us if we allowed them to have, which I don't agree with that, but, like, you know, if we allowed them to do shits. He was a big guy on civil rights, opposed slavery. He also, so Hamiltonian economics was a thing, right? And a lot of the things about Hamilton that we'll get into later, it's like Hamilton did not hit. Like, Hamilton was like a borderline fucking fascist, right? Like, he is not. We've made him, not we, but Lin-Manuel Miranda has sort of made him into this sort of like liberal idea of what a white man should be, and it's like, dog, like, he fucking was not at all. Like, Burr actually is the one, like, Hamilton and them were like, barely any government. We'll just privatize all this bullshit out, like all the stuff you're hearing today. Whereas, like, Burr was like, no, we need a powerful military that focuses mainly on defense. Like, we don't need to be going and fucking with everybody. We need a really strong central government. And we need to be more diplomatic to people and have allies. Like, again, very like modern day sort of liberal policies, right? Also, he was very, religiously tolerant. He did not believe what some people think, that like the Americans should be a Christian nation. He was like, all of it, whatever. You come here, you good, whatever. Also, that was another thing. He was trying to get German refugees the right to vote, like immigrants. He was super hardcore for immigrants, which is so funny because, like, a lot of the people weren't when they was immigrants, like 20 years before. Like, the classic case of like pulling the ladder up whenever you
It's funny because even today, obviously today, there's a lot of Americans who are very anti-immigrant, and in my head, I've always been like, well, I mean, you know what? None of us here to begin with, right?
Right.
Like, and it's like, but today it's like people will be like, hell, that was fucking 200 years ago. My people came over here 300 years ago. It's like, that's too long ago for it to matter. And it's like, still, but all right, I hear you. But back then, when we weren't even America yet, we're still just calling, like, we were still brand new. The idea that people back then were like, we can't have no immigrants in this country.
Crazy.
It's like, truly
saying
wild.
that with an accent.
Yeah, right.
So in summation, he supported suffrage beyond landowners. He advocated for women's intellectual equality. He took legal cases for Black Americans. By the way, when he was a lawyer, he regularly, when other people wouldn't represent Black people, he would do it, and often pro bono, because he was just like, nobody's going to take your case. I will, because above all, I believe in the law, and I believe that everybody deserves a fair shake, because that's what we literally wrote in a fucking piece of paper. He established financial institutions to help small businesses, and he avoided religious rhetoric in politics. Now, that's it for this week, but let me give you a teaser. Next week, we're going to be talking about his role in the American Revolution, his relationship with the Founding Fathers, including but not limited to his duel with Alexander Hamilton, and also, that time that maybe he tried to lead an insurrection against the country and become the Emperor of Mexico. So that'll be fun.
That does sound fun.
It will be fun. We do have some air missile, Trae, if you will. Sorry, hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this long show, but I had a lot of shit to say. So sorry, Trae. I know you got fucking karate or something. The boys at karate.
No.
Okay.
You good?
Okay. All right. All right. Here we go. This is from our buddy John. Subject line: stiff upper lip and all that. Hey guys, Bob's your uncle means that everything is taken care of for you. You're all set. You've got it made. The expression apparently dates back to 1887 when the original Uncle Bob, British Prime Minister Lord Salisbury, made his nephew, Arthur Balfour, Irish secretary in a move that reeked of nepotism. But nowadays, the expression has lost its early connotations, and anyhow, I use it mainly as BYU in place of QED to indicate that a theorem has been nailed. Stay fancy, John from Massachusetts. So, Bob's your uncle truly used to be like, well, Bob's your uncle. So I guess you can do whatever you want. I love that.
That's funny. I appreciate the etymology lesson and all that. But yeah, what we said last week, it meant is pretty much what it means, right? I mean, he kind of confirmed that.
Sure.
Didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he wasn't calling us wrong. He was just saying this is the etymology.
Here's some background on it, which is...
subject line, Hamilton Burr, the Dollop. The Dollop did a few podcasts about the life of Aaron Burr and his run with Alexander Hamilton, number 539. Very informative and, as always, hilarious. Dave points out how actually Hamilton's ideas for this country were very anti-democratic, looking much more like a military dictatorship. Stay fancy, Ryan. Yes, I've been told that is how Dave feels about all that, and I have chosen to not listen to that run of the Dollop until I finish mine. Therefore, I can deny any cheating or whatever. But I look forward to it because I fucking love the Dollop. But dude, I can't even imagine how many subjects I've covered that also the Dollop has covered because they've been around for 15 goddamn years and we tread in similar water.
Right.
So you'll have that. Assignments for CHO. CHO, here's an assignment. Read The Dawn of Everything. I only brought this up because you read that, didn't you? Didn't you read The Dawn of Everything?
Keep going. I don't think so.
It's by Graeber and Wingrau. It will overturn everything you ever thought about the history of the world. And also check out Nathaniel Lyon and the Army of the West, Missouri, beginning of Civil War from St. Louis to Wilson's Creek. That's our buddy Thomas. I thought that when I mentioned...
I think you're thinking of the book I mentioned earlier, the Bill Bryson book, A Brief History of Nearly Everything.
You're right. That is correct.
Seems like they're similar. It seems like The Dawn of Everything is sort of like Sapiens, I guess.
A
new history, which I've also read that, but new history of humanity. So,
maybe that's why I thought, because we've both read Sapiens and we were talking about it. Maybe I thought that, I don't know. Subject line, slavery role play in 6th grade, Nazis in the 4th. I mean, could not open that one, guys. That's a banger. Dear Corey and Trae, I was hoping my title would catch your attention. It did. I'm a very pale person. Think Victorian ghost child haunting my own house with my whiteness. From a small town in rural Illinois. From a small town in rural Illinois. And I wish I was making this up. In 6th grade, we did a learning unit on slavery, and part of that was LARPing. Students would be sent to various other classrooms to assist teachers with menial tasks, i.e. stapling papers, cleaning, running errands, etc. We were assigned a personality type, and students who were disobedient to their master teachers would get whip marks made from strips of masking tape. I always remember a few 8th grade boys, I always remember a few 8th grade boys would delight in using that yearly opportunity to drop the N-bomb on you when passing you in the hallways. My Lord. Do you need a minute? Do you need a minute to pick your jaw up off the floor? Good call. Yes, I do. Several of my friends and I have had to have a serious discussion about it in adulthood. We were all thinking, did I make this shit up or did it really happen? We are also horrified, but it's an amazing story to tell people to see the look on their faces. So when I relayed this story to my last boyfriend, without missing a beat, he just fired back, at my school, we role played as Nazis in the 4th grade. What the fuck was going on in 90s education in Illinois? Who greenlit this shit? Anyways, thought I would share my bizarre experience with y'all and wanted to give a movie suggestion. I was listening to the episode on strippers. We did an episode on strippers? Nice.
I don't remember that, but...
I don't either. Where CHO discussed older forms of erotic dance. Still not ringing a bell.
I don't remember that at all. No.
By the way, I'm not saying it definitely happened. I believe you. Where CHO discussed older forms of erotic dance. There's a fun movie starring Dame Judi Dench about a British widow that buys a theater and puts on those tableau nude shows. It's called Miss Henderson Presents, and I think you'll love the fancy mixed with titties and war-era England. I bet you I will. Love you guys. Stay fancy, LC. Well, we got to end with that one because I got a couple thoughts. I thought we was racist.
See, we didn't do anything like that at all. What did y'all do in that vein?
Nothing.
Anything?
Like
we didn't either. So,
we acted like slavery was fine and didn't exist half the time.
One of the most viral videos in the history of the internet, from my perspective, was that black dude smoking weed in a college dorm and telling everybody a story about when he was in elementary school in Alabama. They took him on a field trip to pick cotton. You've seen that?
It's so
everybody's
funny.
seen that. Yeah, I read that dude later became a lawyer and tried to have that scrubbed and everything because it didn't hit for him in his professional life that was out there. But
he hit real hard in that video.
Yeah, right. He was a great storyteller. It's very funny. It's a real story. But anyway, I've since heard that it's not an uncommon thing in the South, and apparently there's some in South Carolina even where they'll take kids every year in whatever grade, 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever grade it is. Every year they take them to a cotton field and make all the kids pick cotton, and it's white kids too.
I can
and everything.
justify that more than I can.
That's what I was about to say because I was going to say,
my granny picked
everybody
cotton.
heard that story and was just like, God damn, the South is wild.
Right.
That's so fucked up. But like the one in South Carolina I read about in particular, this is crazy. They got like slave drivers and shit out like role players, like white master dudes with whips in the fields and shit. They don't whip the school children, but they holler at them. The whole point of this stuff is meant to illustrate to kids how fucking hard and brutal the life of a slave was.
Sure.
Right? Like,
which I can get behind a little bit.
That's the point. It's meant to show. It's like going to like a Holocaust museum or something. Right. And it's like, it's supposed to fuck you up.
It's not going to be fun.
You're supposed to be like, this is wild. This is gnarly.
Right.
And so in that context, it's like,
I get it.
I mean, but
well, dude,
maybe they ought not make the black kids do it. But
no, I agree. No, they shouldn't. No, they shouldn't. The black kids should get to
weird. What do they do instead?
Just sit there.
They guys play basketball today. We're taking the white kids on a
let them. No, I agree with you. I get
on a field
that.
Trip.
I get that. Now, I remember the viral story
really
of
the field and field trip there too. By the way,
I remember the story that the black guy was telling, and like, if I remember correctly, though, his didn't have any. There was no LARPing involved. They literally just went out and picked cotton and stuff. And with that one, like again, I know the connotation or whatever, and I'm not trying to defend in any way. But I like my grandmother picked like slaves picked cotton, yes, but also it happened like cotton was still a thing. Regardless of if they're slaves or not, like cotton still is a thing, and my grandmother picked cotton and all that stuff. So like, it's not, I don't think that school was like, let's go show you what all the black kids did. It was just like, here's some cotton, go pick it. And like, I understand the connotation, but like, when I watched that video, I was like, I get why this dude thinks this, and I get why he felt that way without question. I don't really sense any malice on the part of the people. Now, again, when you get fucking the Daniel Day-Lewis of whatever podunk town that is to go out there and be like, fucking, whoosh, you know, pick it up. Like, that's way different.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I always thought my school in my town is wild too, and then I always thought yours was way wilder in comparison. And you said y'all didn't do anything like that, and we didn't do anything like that either. So, you just sent a video yesterday on Instagram. It looked like a real school and a real gym where they're called the Cotton Pickers or whatever. Like that's the school mascot. Let's go Cotton Pickers, and then And then at the end of the video, he aims the camera down at the bleachers, and somebody had used a Sharpie to write the N-word on the bleachers.
Yeah,
it's like
funny
there's still some wild-ass schools out there.
It's so
deep
funny.
South and also rural America.
For
not
sure.
just
And
the southern part.
It wouldn't surprise me if that was like a South Georgia, school or something like that, because like my thing, and I think that in this situation, it's like we benefited from this because we never felt the need to do this, but in so many other ways, it's obviously a bad thing. We didn't have a large black community. You know what I mean? So because we didn't have a large black community, in my opinion, what I think has happened was it was easier for them for our school or whatever to just ignore all that and pretend it wasn't that big of a deal. And they never had anybody bucking up against them for it because there wasn't a black community. Whereas like if we'd had a large black community and tried to pull that same shit, those people would have been like, okay, what about this? And maybe our school would have felt the need to be like, okay, we have to do something. I don't know if it would gotten into like a simulation of slavery, but like I think for people like me, schools like that, where it's so homogenized, it really is. They just go, no one's going to argue with us if we just don't talk about it. You know what I mean? So why do it?
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right.
Where you going to be?
Well, we already did that. We did it.
It don't matter.
I think we should make that I think we should just do that way from now on.
I think we should.
So
I think we should button end it. Yeah.
Bookend it.
Bookend it. Button end it.
Yeah. Bookend it. Put a button it up on it. Button it up. Yeah. TraeCrowder.com. Just go there and you'll see where I'll be. But yeah, come see me.
Me too. CoreyRyanForrester.com. Go there and you'll see where I'll be. And also go to WeLoveCorey.com. I just did a live stream for everybody. If you weren't involved, you can catch the replay and be there for the next one. Stay fancy, go get our merch. StayFancyMerch.com. It looks good on me. Stay fancy, motherfuckers.
Skew.
Skew. Here's Lydia Lovelace.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Royalty and rednecks are alike. They both like cutting and picking fights. Biscuits and baked beans where they don't belong. Sit on down with Corey and Trae and learn some fancy shit today. We'll laugh a little even when they're wrong. They'll take you to a magical place where if you call someone a cunt, nobody cares. They keep it debonair at putting on airs, putting on airs, putting on airs.